Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today I am so excited to share with you the best books that I read in 2022. Every year I say this, but it truly is so exciting to finally sit down and just talk about, gush about, and celebrate the best of the year. So every single year I do a top 10 list. This year the list was a little bit difficult to pull together. I think there were maybe like 4 that could have been on the list that could have been in the bottom half but didn't make it. So the list was just a little bit competitive this year, which was very exciting. But once I actually had the top 10 assembled, I knew it was going to be in the top 10. Once they were together, actually ranking them, because I ranked my top 10, ranking them was one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do. Just really up until a few days ago, I was switching around 5, 4, and 3. So that just tells you how amazing these books are. If you guys are new to my top 10 list or my top 10 videos, I don't include multiple books in a series. I don't include the same author twice. None of these are rereads, and we are gonna start from the 10th best book of the year. And as the video goes on, they're just gonna get better and better and better until we reach the #1 spot. And if anybody brand new to BookTube is like finding this video, so these are books that I just read in 2022, not necessarily books that were published in 2022, although there is one on here that's pretty high up that was published this year that I cannot wait to talk about. That is really all you need to know going into this video. I'm gonna keep this intro super short so we can get to the good part. I hope you enjoy this video. Welcome to the best books of 2022. Coming in at number 10, we have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I know, like, this is a romance book. Who am I? What is going on? But when I tell you this book has stayed with me all year, the lasting power for this novel was so strong. This is actually the first book I read this year that is making this list. I read this all the way back in February, and I swear I have not stopped thinking about this book. I have not stopped thinking about Eva and Shane. This was just an amazing reading experience. It's just so perfect and all-consuming. I was so wrapped up in their relationship, and you can just tell that Tia Williams had so much fun writing them, writing the chemistry, the way that they balance each other out, the way that they bounce dialogue off of each other. It is just one of the most memorable experiences I had in 2022 reading this book. I laughed, I cried. There was a moment where I gave myself a headache because I was like, this book cannot end like this. What is going on? I was stressed. I had to close the book a couple of times because I was so invested in the relationship of these two characters. So in this, we're following our 2 main characters, Eva and Shane. Let me put this down. And both of them are authors. Shane is he has more like literary recognition, that sort of thing. And Eva has more of a dedicated fan base because she writes these like fantasy romance stories. But the kicker is, over the years, Eva and Shane have been writing about each other in their books. And basically their main characters have been stand-ins for each other. We see them as adults who are, both very successful in their own right. But actually, when Eva and Shane were teenagers, that's when they first met. And they spent 7 days in June together as these teenagers and just felt like the world didn't understand them. They didn't fit in. Eva came from a really difficult home life, and so they really found comfort in each other for that week that they, were together as teenagers. And it was so rocky, it was so tumultuous, but they were there for each other. But after that 7 days, they never saw each other again until, we start the book and they're actually adults. Throughout the book, as adults, they have another 7 days in June, not to really pick up where they left off because just so much time has passed and so much has happened, but more so to just see where the relationship can go, or if a relationship is even possible at this point. And a lot of old wounds are opened, and it's so good. It's so beautiful. I loved Eva's daughter. The 2 of them, they had just some of the most hilarious conversations. Eva's daughter just stole every scene she was in. She was so quirky and outspoken, outgoing, and just, again, was a standout character for me. So this entire cast was incredible. And if you are someone who primarily reads sci-fi and fantasy like I do, like, just take a chance, step outside the comfort zone, step outside your genre. And if you want to pick up a romance novel, please go do yourself a favor and read 7 Days in June. All right, so coming in at number 9 is a book that I actually thought was not going to be on this list, and that's The City in the City by China Miéville. I had actually talked about this book pretty recently in one of my other year-end videos. I was like, I'm just going to talk about this book now because it's probably not going to be on my best of the year list. Now, this book has not left me. My mind is just still blown. I think this is the perfect example of an author taking something that is just so seemingly normal and ordinary, like a police procedural. This is a crime novel. China Mieville takes that and just spins it into something so unlike anything I'm sure you or I have ever read before. In The City and the City, we have two fictional cities that exist in our real world. They exist, they're like supposed to be set somewhere in Eastern Europe. And those two cities are Beshel and Olkoma. They occupy the same like space, the same geographical area. But the wild thing is you could be like walking down a normal street in one of those cities, and like one of the buildings could be a Beshel building, and then one could be like an Olkoma cafe, and they all exist in the same area. It gets even weirder because the citizens of these cities are taught to unsee the other one. So as a citizen of Beshel, you could just be walking around living your life outside, and there could be like a citizen of Olkoma like on the other side of the street, and you have been trained your whole life to like not see that person. It's so trippy in just a way I was not anticipating at all. What I love about this book, aside from just it being really weird like that and having this very dark like speculative element to it, China Mieville actually gives both of these cities this really deep and rich history and this culture. Olkoma is more well off than Beshel is, and so people have a different way of life, and it's so fascinating. It truly is an experience, and there are just so many moments when you're like, what is going on? What am I reading? So that's kind of like the foundation of the story, but the actual story is this young woman was murdered, and our main character, Inspector Borlu, the book actually starts with him coming to the crime scene, finding her body, and as Borlu and his partner start getting a little bit deeper into the mystery of who this young woman was and what she was involved in, it's just something that starts him on this journey of having to work with a detective from Olkoma, and it's something that starts unraveling both of their like shared histories, something that they believe about another city in particular. I can't really explain this book any better than that. It just really is something that I think needs to be experienced. I'm mind blown. I cannot wait to read more from China Mieville. I do have Perdido Street Station on my shelf, and I also have Embassy Town, so I will be getting to more of his books in 2023, but I think this was just such a strong start, and it really did blow me out of the water. So coming in at number 8 is a book that I love so much. This is 12 Kings in Sharakai, and this is by Bradley P. Beaulieu. This was amazing. This is a desert fantasy story, Middle Eastern inspired. Everything worked so perfectly for me in this book, from the character work to the slow world building. I felt lost in this world in the best way possible. Like every time I opened it up for another like reading stint, it's so immersive. The author just does such a good job of pulling you into every single detail. This is a book you read and you just know, you feel it in your bones that this author knows his own world inside and out, and it's a journey that you go on with him. It feels like you're walking through the streets of Sharakai. This is the first book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series. This is a completed 6-book series, high fantasy, epic fantasy, and in this we are following our main character Shada, and she is a pit fighter, but she also is like what's known as a runner, where she goes and like drops off these kind of illicit packages. The city of Sharakai is this main like center of like the economy and trade and everything for all the other regions in the desert. And Sharakai is ruled by these 12 ruthless kings. And so our main character Shada, she is caught out on a holy night, and something happens on that holy night that puts Shada on a path of discovery to learn more about what happened to her mother, but also learn, more about Shada's past. I thought Shada was just an incredible main character, and I think there are some parts of the story that you can kind of guess where something is gonna go, which is fine, but I think Shada was the perfect main character to take us on that journey. She's the kind of character that just fits her own world so well, if that makes any sense. Just the way that she navigates through Sharakai and knows the in and outs of her world is just so fascinating to read. And so you want her to take your hand and lead you through this city and lead you through all of these mysteries and all these discoveries, and I loved it so much. I do think where this book could lose a lot of people is in the world building. It's very heavy, it's very slow, and there are some things you're just like, Bradley, I don't care about this. I don't care what color the the sand is on this day. But I was just so sucked in. I was like, yes, like tell me what the sky looks like on this random day. Tell me what this feels like. Tell me what it smells like. You're just walking through the markets and you can just smell it. You can feel it. You can feel the heat of the desert. I loved it. I loved it so much. The world is so huge. It's so beautiful. And I think the characters just are perfect and they work so well in this world. And we do get the book from the perspective a little bit of Shada's childhood best friend, Emery. He's also a great main character. The way that they interact with each other, their dynamic, their friendship, I think it's so strong and I loved it. I love the writing in this. I cannot wait to continue on with the series. I actually do own already the second book with Blood Upon the Sand, and just where things left off in book 1, I am so eager to pick up the second book in 2023. This was amazing. I think this is just a really strong start to what could be a great fantasy series. Coming in at number 7 is The Good House by Tanana Reevdu, and this is a horror novel. I loved it. I love this so much. This is my second book by Tanana Reevdu. Just the way that she writes her characters, her storytelling style, the way that she infuses history into the story, the journey that the characters go on, it is unmatched. So this book is set in 2001 and 2003, and it takes place in this town in Washington that just has this really long, dark, and racist past, this racist history. So we're following our main character, Angela, and she has inherited her grandmother's house. It starts in 2001 and they're having a 4th of July party. And her grandmother's house has been known through the years to be called the Good House. And something absolutely tragic happens at the 4th of July party to Angela's son, Corey. From there, we flash forward another 2 years, and Angela is coming back to the house to not only decide what she wants to do with the house, but also to uncover what actually happened to her son at this 4th of July party. And in the process of doing that, Angela starts uncovering more about not only the town and its past, but also her, Angela's own family line and just kind of the darker things that were happening in her family's past and what her grandmother experienced. Tanana Reevdu is the kind of writer, the kind of storyteller that I will at this point follow to the ends of the earth. Like, she knows how to tell a story. Just her character development along the way, her character growth, just the family dynamics that she knows how to write are so incredibly strong. I think The Good House is a masterful book. There are many moments in here where it's not really foreshadowing, because Tanana Reevdu will like blatantly tell you something very ominous and you like have to kind of wait to see how we get there and the paths that we take to get there. She writes these moments of tension and genuine horror so perfectly throughout this story. I love the mother and son dynamic in this book. It's so good, and we just see how over the course of this story, this history that's over this town and the history of Angela's family, how that is just manifesting itself in different ways throughout this book. I love this book so much. There were some genuine moments in here where I was like, this is too creepy to keep reading. And some of the moments in here, I was like, why do I feel kind of sick right now? Like, why is my stomach hurting? Tanana Reevdu just knows how to throw you into the story. I love the journey that she takes you on in this. I love the way that these stories are woven, how she infuses, historical elements into it, and we learn more about Angela's grandmother and everything. This was just so good. I love this so much. I cannot praise this book enough. Tanana Reevdu is just one hell of a writer, and I cannot wait to read more from her in 2023. All right, we're getting close to the top 5 now. Let's talk about number 6. Coming in the 6th spot is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This was so good. I finally know what the hype is about. It is real, let me tell you. I cannot believe that I had such an amazing time with this when I finally got into the Mistborn trilogy. This is it. I feel like I got my fantasy card finally, after reading this book. It really is as amazing as everybody has been saying it is. This is just hands down I think this is the best magic system I have ever read up until this point. The magic system is why this book is so high up on this list, quite honestly, because I've just never seen anything like that. The way that Brandon Sanderson uses the magic in scene and in action is just, It's unreal. This is a metal-based magic system, and you know, I'm not gonna go too much into detail. Like, different metals can do different things. So this takes place in a world where we have this figure known as the Lord Ruler. You know, the world is just covered in ash all the time. And so every rebellion basically that's tried to see the light of day has just completely failed over the years. And so we have our main character, actually two main characters, but one of our main characters is Vin, and she is incredibly special. She can do some just wild things with this magic system, and we see her get wrapped up into this crew led by this amazing character who I love. We see her get wrapped up into that as they try to lead a rebellion of their own in different ways, and they all have different jobs to do in order to try to bring down the Lord Ruler. I feel like I'm just one in, like, I don't know, a million at this point that is just obsessed with the Final Empire and Sanderson's magic system and everything. I love the relationships in this so much, and just to see Vin slowly, you know, I'm still not done with the trilogy, so I don't know where she's gonna end up, but just to even see her make the progress that she does throughout the Final Empire was just so good. It was so good to see. I'm in love. I'm in love with the magic. I'm in love with the characters, the world. And I feel like a lot of the things that I was thinking about the world while reading this book, just by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, how is this gonna be wrapped up? Where do we go from here? It is just so good. It is so entertaining. And my other favorite thing is the found family. I love seeing that in books, but I love like when it's good and it just really works. I can't speak highly enough of the Final Empire. I am just so excited to be on this Mistborn journey and reading through the trilogy for the first time. This was perfect for me. I cannot wait to wrap up the Mistborn trilogy in 2023 and make my way to the Way of Kings afterward. Like I said, the hype is real for a reason. All right, now let's get into the top 5. These next 3 books are the only ones that have been reordered a ridiculous amount of times. At one point I had number 5 at 3, I had 3 at 4, 4 at 5. It was all over the place, but I think I got it right. And at number 5, we have Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I feel like a broken record at this point, but this was absolutely incredible. The way Silvia Moreno Garcia has crafted this deep lore, has done this amazing world building, and created 2 of the most compelling characters I've read all year is in this short book. It needs to be studied. Writers take note, readers go read this. It needs to be studied. This was phenomenal. So in this, we have our 2 main characters, Domingo and Atul. And Domingo is a human, Atul is a vampire. And Domingo, I love Domingo so much. He is one of my favorite characters this year. He is so kind and so loyal. He is so sweet. My heart, I love him. And so he sees Atul, and she's clearly needs some help. He just throws himself into the problem. Atul, she just doesn't want to give him the time of day, but Domingo is just so persistent. And he's like, no, let's be friends. Like, I got this. And then it turns out Atul is on the run from a vampire clan. And it's like, okay, Domingo does not know what he just got himself into. Atul was amazing. Atul and her dog, like, she is just the coolest character. And I'm so blown by the world building in this. She created this just amazing, this deep lore for these vampires. It takes place in Mexico City, and you know, it's this dark urban fantasy story, and Mexico City in this book just feels so vivid and so alive and, you know, a little edgy because of the vampires running around, and just the writing, the storytelling, the way this book unfolds. I was mesmerized. I was like, Moreno Garcia, what are you doing? I can scream about this until I have no breath left. This was amazing. I like tabbed so many of Domingo's lines of him standing up for Atul and just coming to her defense. There's so many moments of that are just intense because Atul is trying to get out of the city and just trying to find ways to stay safe, and you learn more about the enemy vampires that are after her in this book. You get some flashbacks, some history to how we got to this point and why there is this rival. Oh my God, this is one of the best books just ever. Please go read this. I have really not stopped thinking about Domingo and Atul since I read this book. I forgot the dog's name, but the dog is just amazing as well and gets it done. This is so good. As we get into the top 5, this is the point where I just start rambling on and telling you how good things are and like forgetting to actually explain it. But I loved every second of this book. Every page was perfect. The atmosphere was perfect. Just, I don't know how someone can craft something so well fleshed out, so complete, so rich in lore and history in 200 and not even 50 pages. I don't know. I don't know. Number 4 is Recursion by Blake Crouch. I'm not even going to go into full-blown detail about what this story is about because it is a little challenging for me to keep straight, but this is the kind of book where you genuinely have to like close it sometimes and just ask yourself, how does someone conceive of this story? And then not only that, but put it on paper. Like, how do you open up a Word document and just be like, I'm writing Recursion? Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. This book will mess with your mind. It is so trippy. It is like existential crisis level type of trippy. This is like Blake Crouch at his best, and he just knows what to do, and he knows how to keep you along for the ride. The very basics of it in this book, there is this phenomenon called false memory syndrome. We have 2 main characters that we're following. One of them is Helena, and she was this ambitious creator. She created something to basically preserve memories for people who were a little bit older, people who were losing their memories. Like, she was a bit manipulated into doing more than was anticipated, and it just got into the wrong hands. Things got out of control, and it created something, the false memory syndrome, where people start basically remembering things that just never happened, things that are not true. And we also have our main character Barry in this, who starts the book going to investigate someone who is suffering from false memory syndrome. I can't even tell you where the book goes from there. The way that Blake Crouch plays with time and reality and memory is it's literally like mind-meltingly good, and you are just like, what is going on in this book? How did we get here? There are just different timelines that start being woven into the story. We get these like alternate histories, and I don't know what the outline for this book could have possibly looked like to get it into this final form. Now that I've read Blake Crouch's big 3 novels, Dark Matter, Upgrade, and Recursion, now that I've read those, Recursion is by far my favorite. I loved Upgrade. I love Dark Matter. They can't touch this book. This is the kind of book that has made Blake Crouch an author for me. Granted, he's writing like science fiction, or if he dabbles into speculative, like whatever. If Blake Crouch is writing it, I will buy it immediately. Recursion was phenomenal. Let's get into the top 3. Number 3 is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I don't know what I'm gonna say about this book. I can't put this book into words. This book left me quite literally speechless a few times, especially towards the end. It left me speechless, and I still feel that way. I've never read this book before until 2022. I never had to read it in high school, college, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I felt like I would not have appreciated, loved it at all when I was like 16, 17, whatever years old. But reading Frankenstein as an adult and just reading it now is just something like I could have never imagined. I was not prepared for how sad this book was going to be. I knew kind of the basics of the story. This, I think, you know, a lot of us do. You just know that Frankenstein created the monster and he abandoned him, and the monster goes to wreak havoc. It's a little more detailed and a little more traumatizing. We are following main character Victor Frankenstein. The book actually starts at the end of the story. Frankenstein is being rescued by this explorer sailor. He basically starts telling the story of how he got there. We start at the very beginning, like literally the beginning, and we get Frankenstein's young life. We get his family. We get this in-depth look at his education, his view on the world. But the education part is when we start to learn more about Frankenstein's obsession, and it is a deep, deep obsession with philosophy and chemistry, and this just insatiable need to try to create life. And this follows him over the years, and he finally does it. He creates the monster, and very quickly he is horrified by what he has done and abandons the monster. From there, this is what I did not expect. We get the monster's POV. I have never cried so hard reading a book in my life. In this, we see the monsters in the world. He tries so hard. I'm getting choked up just talking about this book. He tries so hard to get that human connection, to understand humans, and to really understand his place in the world, and just why is he here. And each time, you know, he does all these good things, and he tries to be so kind, and each time he is shunned, he is assaulted, and every time he just keeps trying to connect, like your heart, it really feels like your heart is breaking at so many moments in this book. You can just tell this book is written with so much passion that you just feel it on this deep level. Mary Shelley just knew how to get to the heart of how garbage like humans can be, pretty much. I think what really did it for me and why this book is so high up at number 3 is a moment that came at the end of the story when the monster actually, you know, has a chance to talk to Frankenstein. And he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something along the lines of, you know, I've been doing all this and I can't seem to find human connection and I just don't understand it. And he's been reading, I think the book was Paradise Lost. He's been reading Paradise Lost. And he says to Frankenstein, he's like, you know, even the devil had friends. And I had to shut the book. That did it. I was like, Mary Shelley, you didn't have to write that. You get to the heart of that obsession that Frankenstein had. You see the journey that led both of them to that moment of confrontation. And it really is one of the most transformative, one of the most rewarding reading experiences I had in 2022. I can see why this is a classic, why it has withstood the test of time. This is truly, truly, I think, one of the best books ever written. Let's get into the top 2 books of 2022. Number 2 is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. I love this book with my whole heart. This is the only 2022 release that is on this list. It's the only one that I am still thinking about constantly. This was just amazing in every way, shape, and form. I am in awe. I'm in pure awe of this book, of the story, the characters, the world building, the writing. This book is so good. So this is the first book in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. I am convinced, absolutely convinced, if The Tyranny of Faith is anything like this book, or even just slightly better if that's possible, this will become my new all-time favorite trilogy. I truly think Richard Swan has created one of the most memorable, morally gray, dynamic characters I have read in a very, very long time, with our main character, Justice von Walt. But the more interesting thing that I just am so obsessed with in this book is that we are seeing von Walt through the eyes of his 19-year-old clerk, Helena. This book is doing a lot of amazing things in terms of genre. It's like a detective story, a murder mystery, but it's a fantasy novel, like a high fantasy story. But kind of the foundation of the story is that we have this empire, and the empire has conquered all of these different territories, and so now everybody is under, you know, the same like empire umbrella. And so von Walt, he works on behalf of the emperor, and so he has his traveling court that go everywhere with him. So von Walt, he is given all this power to act as the judge, the jury, and the executioner wherever he goes on behalf of the emperor. And you just see how one man can hold all of this power and authority, and you see how he handles that throughout the book through Helena's eyes. You see how that impacts him. But what I love about this book is that we as the reader know and see how he brings down the law if needed. But at the same time, when we see him through Helena's eyes, we see him as we just see him as a man, as this man struggling sometimes with things that he's hearing about the empire, struggling with, you know, what is the morally right thing to do, and if he is on the right side of things. This is so incredible. And Richard Swan, he just does some amazing things, juggling these themes of law versus religion and justice versus power. Who has the right to hold it? Who needs to be in control? Von Walt is like at the center of all that, struggling through all of that. And you just see him from all different sides because of Helena. And what I love about her character, she is very young, but you learn that the story is actually being told with quite some distance, because Helena, she is much older telling the story, but we're focused on this one point in time where she is 19 and following von Walt around and being privy to the things that he's doing throughout the empire. But there are several instances where her older self will kind of interject and be like, oh, you know, I wish I had known then what I know now, or, you know, this is not how things went for us, unfortunately, after that decision was made. She recognizes like when she's being foolish and kind of giving von Walt a hard time. She's also someone who is not afraid to challenge him, to ask him questions, and just the way that they play off of each other is so It is so good. Everything about this is amazing. The world building unfolds so smoothly throughout this story. Von Vault, he's going around interrogating different people because there is that like mystery subplot that's going on. And you just learn so much about the Empire as a whole and what different people believe about the Empire as Von Vault is going around this town asking questions and interrogating people and trying to put pieces together. This is so good. It's so good. The atmosphere is perfect. This book is freezing. It is always cold in here, cold and rainy. And that adds just another layer of tension to the story and what these characters are trying to accomplish. But just as it goes on, I was just floored by this exploration of law versus religion and who holds power and who has the right to hold power and what happens when one group starts challenging that, and how are you going to react? Are you going to react in like a moral way, or what is that going to look like? And we are like right there front and center with all of that. I loved it. This is one of my favorite fantasy books of the last couple of years. I cannot recommend this enough. It is absolutely phenomenal. All right, welcome to the #1 book of 2022. I think some of you might have been able to guess this one if you've been watching a few videos here and there and just know how much I love this series and these characters. The #1 book of 2022 is Morningstar by Pierce Brown, which is the 3rd book in the original Red Rising trilogy. This is hands down one of the best conclusions to an original trilogy, one of the greatest character arcs, not even just for our main character Daryl, but for this large cast of characters. It is just some of the most satisfying battles. Everything about this book was absolute excellence. I don't think we give Pierce Brown enough credit for his character work. Just to think about where these characters started in Red Rising, where they ended up in Golden Sun, how things kind of fell apart there, and how new relationships and alliances were formed in there, to where we ended up landing in Morningstar it's unreal. It truly is unreal. I was screaming at so many points in this book out of like stress, out of fear. I was screaming at characters making decisions like I was screaming at a TV screen. The impact that these characters have on you, you just feel every single part of their journey. And looking back from where, like I said, looking back from where things began with Red Rising to now, this is one of the greatest trilogies ever written. I will stand on that hill. I think Red Rising is a modern sci-fi classic series at this point. So there's not too much that I can say about this with it being the final book, but just overall, if you guys are brand new to Red Rising, or if you just have not sure what this series is about, in this we have a society that is broken up by color. The lowest people in society are reds at the very bottom, and then golds are at the top of the pyramid in the society, and they control everything. And there's Roman influences in this book, like with the titles that people have and the way that the politics and the society is structured as a strong Roman influence. And so in the first book, our main character Daryl is a red. Well, I mean, he's a red throughout the whole thing, but he's a red, and he gets wrapped up in this rebellion to basically take down the society from the inside out. And so in book 1, he is altered and transformed into a gold. He's put into one of the schools in the society that will determine, your place in the gold caste system after you graduate. And so we're following Daryl through all of that rebellion. He's also on a mission of revenge as well. And you are just following that arc. You're getting to know all of these incredible, just incredibly written characters throughout the entire series. And just the way that Pierce Brown writes friendships in this story and the way that alliances come together and fall apart, it is truly one of the best examples that I think I have ever read before. There are some characters, even in book 3, you just still are not sure what to really feel about them. And I think that's such a testament to the writing, because you're just like, Daryl might trust them, but I don't really trust them. And you're side-eyeing certain characters, like, what's going on? Like, the motivations are too close to their chest. And this book, Morningstar, is explosive. The battles, the speeches, everything is so good. You feel for these characters. I think Pierce Brown does a phenomenal job depicting so many different sides of war, and just depicting how characters behave in different sides of the war. And they're so true to who those characters are and who they've always been throughout the whole series. So even though like you've gotten to know characters in books 1 and 2 and you know that they are good people deep down, they've just, you know, they're so far gone and just so wrapped up into their standing in the society and their loyalty to the society that they can't really fathom anything else, and they just struggle so hard with that. I'm blown away. I am blown away by every single aspect of this book. I think this is one of the most satisfying conclusions to a trilogy I've ever read before, and just every single page, every single moment, every single character interaction was just absolute perfection in this entire book. Morningstar is my favorite of the trilogy. Golden Sun that's a very close second, but I love Morningstar. Please do yourself a favor, go read Red Rising. Please stick with it at least till you get to Golden Sun and see if you still like it. But by the time you get to Morningstar, it is just one of the greatest reading experiences I think you will ever have. So that is it for me, you guys. Those are the best books, the 10 best books that I read in 2022. Let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these or if you plan on picking any of them up. Let me know what some of your best books were of the year, and I will see you guys in the next video, which is actually going to be the last video of 2022. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.